Good morning or good afternoon, depending upon when you are looking at this. This is a recording of Ghost Cat by Donna Hill. You should probably have your text open. You can find that in Google Drive. Ghost Cat by Donna Hill. It was growing so dark that Fillmore had to stop reading. But as soon as he put his book down, he began to notice the loneliness again. His mother had been driving without a word ever since they had turned onto this remote and bumpy road. Jody was asleep, curled up in back with her stuffed animal friend. There was nothing to see outside. There was nothing to see out the window except black trees and shrubs along the roadside, thrashing in the wind. Thrashing is on your vocabulary chart. To the west, through the trees, he could see that the sun had melted onto the horizon. But to the east, the sky looked dark and bruised. Suddenly, his mother said, "This must be the house." She stopped the car. Jody sat up. "Are we here?" Jody always awoke at once, alert and happy. She did not seem to know what loneliness and sorrow were. Jody had glossy black curls and eyes like agates. Agates is also in your vocabulary chart. She was little for her 6 years, but sturdy and fearless, as even Fillmore would admit, but only to himself. To others, sometimes as a compliment, he said she was daft. "You two wait here while I take a look," said their mother. Fillmore watched their mother walk along the path between the swaying, overgrown bushes. She looked small walking alone, not much taller than his sister, in fact. Fillmore whispered, "Jody, don't you wish Daddy were here with us?" Jody was brushing down the apron of her animal friend. "Remember last summer with Daddy?" Fillmore said. "The beach, how broad and clean and dazzling it was? Remember what fun we had in the boat?" Jody turned her animal friend about, inspecting her from all sides. "Here comes Mother," Fillmore said. "Let's not remind her of Daddy." But he needn't have warned Jody. She seemed not to have heard a word. "This is it," their mother said. "Help me with the bags, please, Fillmore." He and Jody scrambled out of the car. "Wait! Wait!" Jody called. "I dropped Mrs. Tiggywinkle." "Don't worry, Mrs. Tiggywinkle. We'll never leave you. We love you." "What does she care?" Fillmore protested. For some reason he was annoyed with his sister. "She's only a stuffed hedgehog." "She is not. She's a raccoon. Listen, either she's a hedgehog or she's not Mrs. Tiggywinkle." "Fillmore, please," their mother said, pushing through the creaking gate. A stone path led to a cottage perched on a little bluff overlooking the cove. Trees were sighing and moaning over the roof, and shrubs whispered at the door. The wind dropped suddenly as though the house were holding its breath, and Fillmore could hear the push of waves up the beach and their scrapping retreat over pebbles and shells. His mother paused at the stoop to search through her bag for the key. Now Fillmore could see scaling paint, shutters hanging loose, and windows opaque with dust. "What a dump!" he muttered. When he saw his mother's face, he was sorry. His mother had gone back to teaching and labored to keep up their home. No one knew better than Fillmore how hard it had been. "The agent told us we'd have to take it as is," she said. "That's how we can afford it." She found the key, but could hardly shove the door open for sand that had sucked up against it. "We came for the beach anyway," Fillmore said. "Who cares about the house? I wouldn't care if it was haunted." "Oh, I love the haunted house," Jody cried, bursting into the front door. "Oh, we have a big window with the whole black sky in it. Oh, and a fireplace and a rocking chairs." The floor squealed under her feet as she ran around excitedly. "And here's the kitchen with a black monster stove." Their mother laughed. She had the same dark curly hair, the same eyes as Jody, and when she laughed, she did not look much older. "It's charming, really. Just needs a little work. But first, we need some sleep." They climbed narrow stairs and opened creaking doors to 3 small rooms with beds under dust covers. The covers pleased their mother and made Jody laugh. "Ghosts and more ghosts!" she cried. In his unfamiliar little room above the kitchen, Fillmore kept waking in the night to whistles, squeals, and thumps that could have been ghosts in the house, that could have been anything sinister at all. The next morning Fillmore woke to the melancholy crying of gulls. When he heard Jody's light voice below, he pulled his clothes on hurriedly and went down to the kitchen. "Good morning, dear," his mother said from the stove, where she was already cooking breakfast. "Did you sleep well?" "I didn't sleep at all," Jody put in cheerfully. "Neither did Mrs. Tiggywinkle. We stayed awake all night and listened to the haunted house." Fillmore did not want to admit his own feelings. "You're daft." "Something is here, you know," Jody insisted. "Something besides us." "And I know what it is," the mother laughed. "Sand! We'll get rid of it right now." The house was so small that sweeping and dusting upstairs and down did not take long, and still there was time for the beach before lunch. To Fillmore, the beach was even more disappointing than the house. It was narrow and deserted, with low, dispirited waves the color of mud as far as the eye could see. Another vocabulary word coming. There were no houses in sight, just cliffs and scraggy pine trees at each end of the cove. Edging the sand were patches of weeds and damp brown rags of algae that smelled like vinegar. Ugh, that's a stinky smell. The stain that marked high tide was littered with broken shells, sticks like bones, and here and there a dead fish. A troop of sandpipers ran up the beach and back, and as though frantic to escape. Jody loved everything. She made up a joyful beach song as she built a sand dragon, and then she pressed Fillmore to go with her while she filled her bucket with shells and treasures. Stumping along at her heels, Fillmore demanded, "Why don't you ever talk about Daddy? You were his dear rabbit. Don't forget." "Look, Fillmore," Jody cried. "I found a sand dollar." After lunch they drove out for supplies. "It will be fun to see the village and the shops," their mother said. The village turned out to be only a few houses scattered along the road, and on the beach one rowboat upside down beside a shack with a sign for bait. The shops were only Judson's General Store and Judson's Gas Station. Page 14. A bell jingled as they went into the store. It was dim and cluttered and smelled of dusty bolts of cloth and strong cheese. Ugh, stinky. Behind the counter stood a tall, thin woman who kept her hands in her apron pockets while she looked them over with stern interest. "Good morning," their mother said. "I'm Mrs. Cone. This is my son Fillmore and my daughter Jody. We've rented the Hogwarts place." "Heard you did," said the storekeeper. "We need milk and a few groceries, also lumber and nails, if you have them. We'd like to mend the front stoop. You don't think the owner would mind, do you?" "Not likely. He hasn't seen the place in years. But I'd wait if I were you. See if you like it there first." "Don't you think we'll like it?" Fillmore asked. "Been a lot of folks in and out of the sorry, boys and girls. Our phone is ringing. I'm going to stop right there."